What's up, everybody? How's it going? Hope you guys had a fantastic weekend. I certainly did, because like we all hoped and expected and wished for, we had some sick CS this weekend. Pretty much exactly what we were all crossing our fingers and hoping for, right? Going into this tournament, you had a sick lineup of teams. Basically, the who's who. The only people really missing from the show, Liquid, perhaps SK, basically stand out as like the team that we're missing. But as far as the rest of it is concerned, a fantastic tournament this weekend at Starseries. So we got to talk about Starseries a little bit. Basically, general thoughts on and impressions on the whole thing, on the whole shebang. And just going to hop right into it, right? So, so far, this bodes pretty well. I mean, this was the first big international LAN event that we had coming out of the long break, right? So we've had this nice long break during the month of August, halfway through September now, and basically we're getting into the thick of things again. But August, long break, a lot of teams taking vacation, a lot of roster changes, a lot of questions, right? What was going to happen? And so obviously there was Northern Arena, but that was more of a North American affair. Coming into this week, Starseries. Starseries was the focus because now we actually had some of the standout European teams, as well as a North American team, Cloud9. And then we actually had some Asian teams as well, which was really sick to see. The Chinese, Tyloo, CyberZen were the standout guys. Korea, also a representative, right, with MVP. And so there's a lot to talk about. And I'm going to try and condense it all down into a digestible format, right, because I don't want it to go on too long. So straight out the gates, viewership, right, because that's what I was wondering about coming into the tournament, right? What was viewership going to be like? And I think so far, at least as far as like all channels are concerned, did pretty damn good, right? Definitely wondering about it. You know, I've been trying to, I've been kind of just, taking a step back to look and see, like what would be the turnout, right, for a tournament like this, given all of the factors and everything that are going into this tournament, right? Making gambling, skin gambling much more difficult to do now, real money gambling, these sorts of things, right? Stepping in, we were expecting some kind of change coming out of it, right? Where are we going to go? Is this the proving ground? Is this where we plateau? Blah, blah. And Starseries delivered, man. Super sick as far as viewership is concerned. Lots of viewership all throughout the tournament. Not so much on the first days, obviously, but getting into the playoffs and, ending really strong, right? So 150,000, I think, was where we were at on the English stream at one point, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that's respectable. That was really cool. So we got, as far as viewership is concerned, I think for the tournament, they should be feeling pretty happy right now, Starseries, that they managed to put on one hell of a good show. I mean, as far as the tournament itself looked, the stage looked really sick. Nice booths, big player icons on the stage itself. That's what I really like to see. You see some tournaments, sometimes what they'll do is they'll have those player icons, but they're a little bit small. They may not really stand out anyway. I'm a big fan of like the MLG Columbus style where it's just like massive, like this is the player and, the health goes down or whatever. They get grayed out when they die or whatever, but like you can really see like this is the player, boom, big. And they had that at Starseries. And so as far as the stage is concerned, I think it looked really sick. And this is kind of the level that we expected to see from Starseries coming out of Minsk at the beginning of the year when they did, they really did have that stage production with, the cool opening scenes where you got the CT guy shooting at the terrorist guy and then the grenade flies across. They did that again. And so some cool things there, right? As far as, actual using the in-game models to bolster their on-stage production. I thought that was really cool. And so Starseries, once again, as far as the stage is concerned, they deliver. Really sick stage. Really sick production there. Wasn't really until, there were no major hiccups until obviously at the end when Murphy was lying in wait, for his moment, waiting to strike. And then boom, there's the finals. You know what? We'll kill the server and throw everything into disarray, right? As far as the ruling on that, because there's a lot of talk about admins and decision making and all that sort of stuff recently, server issue, end of the round. The round was pretty much decided anyways already. Both teams were affected in the same way, it seems. And so the decision to play on, perfect. As far as I'm concerned, I think that was the right decision to make. If both teams are suffering from the same sort of scenario, the round was already decided. It was so deep into the round before there were any issues, apparently. So, playing on, it basically led to a really, really sick last map on the finals overpass. And so, moving on from the viewership and all that, that was great. Tournament, definitely looked solid on that front. Really, really exciting stuff to see that, the first tournament back from a nice long break, everybody's turning out in droves to watch. And really, we just got treated to some really sick CS. Obviously a bit stompy on the first few days, but getting into the playoffs, it started to get into the realm of what we wanted out of it, right? Best of threes going the distance, not really one-sided. Semifinals kind of got a little bit one-sided, 2-0s there, and the finals was a 2-0, but that last map on Overpass was just so good. Definitely one of the best single maps that we've had in a long time, and one of the best finals that we've had in a long time, just because of that one map. Because the first map, Cash, not super interesting. NiP pretty much just dismantled G2, and that's that. If the staying with the trend of how finals have gone, right, where there's like one team that's clearly superior to the other. I was at the end of Cash, I was like, okay. This is, it's, I was expecting G2 to dismantle NiP, but it's going the other way, but still pretty one-sided. Okay, I hope that it picks up for Overpass, right? And it did. So if you missed it, definitely go back and watch the VOD. You can find it on like the wiki, Team Liquid wiki. It's on HLTV, like all these different sites. They all have the VOD. So you go and find the VOD, watch the VOD, because that map of Overpass was so good. And it's like a throwback basically to when Maikelele was still on NiP, DreamHack winner 2014. NiP versus LDLC when LDLC won, but damn, was that a sick match, right? Really just on all points. Another difficult sort of scenario. This is the first time that Shoxy has lost to NiP on a LAN final like this, and to be frank, I feel like Shoxy was pretty much the MVP going up to that, and he still performed in the final, still did the best that he could, and this time it didn't go his way. And so a tough break for Shoxy. He had some moments of just, what he showed was possible, what he is capable of, right? Throughout the entire tournament long, he really did hit a very high level. And so, sometimes that's just the way it breaks, though, that you may be hitting this crazy level, but it's just not enough. And NiP definitely showed up across the board. And that was what was really interesting, right? Across the board, NiP showed up. But you have to wonder, right, like what is going to come of this, right? So it seems like obviously your first thought is, holy shit, NiP with Maikelele, they're in the finals, they're looking great, they win. What does this mean? And I have a lot of question marks about it. Because to me, big picture, right? Coming into this tournament, I definitely expected more from VP, from NaVi, from Godsent, right? I think those are the big three that all eyes were on them. We were all wondering, what are they going to deliver? What level are they going to hit? We did a video on Simple joining NaVi and my impressions about that. I thought that they were looking very good, clearly a superior team at that point, and that I was expecting big things to come from them here in Starseries. Turns out they get their heads banged in by Tyloo and go out last in the groups. It's like, okay. VP, same story. Just get their heads banged out. 2 maps, boom, done. Last in their group on the second day. So that was a bit of a shock to the system. Godsent not able to come through either. They started off strong. They just completely shredded Dignitas in their group, and you're thinking, right, okay, are we, is this looking pretty good here for Godsent? And then they just proceed to get completely wrecked by NiP, and then Dig beat them in a best of 3. It's just like, what is this? What, as far as predictions are concerned, right? What is going on? You're looking at the 3 teams that you really got your eye on to go deep in this tournament, or at least in NaVi and VP's case, right? Godsent, you kind of give them a grain of salt. You're not really sure what they're going to deliver, but when it comes to NaVi and VP, certainly expecting more. And we saw them just get completely destroyed. And so when it comes to, the actual results of this tournament, when I look at it, I'm looking at like 2 fluky teams, basically, like the G2 and NiP, and going deep, right? And so it's just a very bizarre sort of scenario, because for me, both of these teams are teams where it's like the stars need to align. And what's interesting is also that threat wasn't there for NiP. So I wonder if this is NiP making that shift according to Valve. They aren't going to change the coach rules, or we don't actually know. They've stood their ground so far in the coach ruling, right? That a coach is not allowed to be the in-game leader. And so funnily enough, there's no threat here at Starseries. So that's an interesting thing. Does it mean that Exist is back in that in-game lead role? What's going on there? Definitely leaves some questions. And so somehow they still manage to come out ahead, right? Even if they have a stand-in and they've changed it up where they don't have their usual in-game leader, somehow NiP make it all the way into the finals. and win the whole thing, right? But this is just like classic NiP. It just feels so weird when you watch NiP sometimes. Like, it's like after this result, I'm still not expecting to see them, deliver like this regularly. They're still going to be that underdog team for me. And the reason being, it just feels like every 6 months or so, they just get the stars align and they get this gasp of energy, or they get good matchups, right? Like Astralis. It just feels like every time it's NiP Astralis, and Astralis should win it, but then NiP win it, right? And then going into the semis, Cloud9 kind of just gifted them that semifinal. None of the Cloud9 players actually really showed up. And then NiP go into the finals. They're playing against a team, G2, that heavily rely on key players really stepping up and having star performances. I mean, Overpass was definitely an all-out brawl back and forth, but G2 didn't really show up to that ultimate level either that allows them to go toe-to-toe with SK, for example. And so, is this like the return of NiP as the ninjas, to rule everything? I don't see it, right? I think that this was definitely a very, it's not to me. I leave this like it was an incredible tournament with sick matches, but I still leave this tournament wondering what the actual pecking order is, if that makes any sense, right? Because SK aren't here, and so. And, Duncan hit the nail on the head, right? Where he tweeted immediately afterward where he's just like, this still doesn't, this still kills the storyline of there being a real Duncan Thorin, sorry. But, of there being a real contender to take down SK, because the teams that we're focused on, NiP, NaVi and VP, nothing really there. And Godsent definitely looking shaky. And so, who is going to take out SK? Because right now with the shape that SK have had at the beginning of the year, and that I assume will have once Fur joins up with the roster again and they go into New York, I mean, I'm still thinking the two teams that won this tournament are still not consistent enough across the board to be able to take the fight to SK and win against SK. And so leaving this tournament, I still feel like I'm confused, because I mean, G2 are still maintaining that level. NiP definitely just, had a crazy level boost, but I don't think that they can deliver that every tournament. And then the teams that I expect to do well, that should be at that level to go and contend versus SK, went out in the groups. And so you kind of just left wondering, well, okay, what's actually going on here? Is it going to be chaos every time, or are we actually going to have, some kind of stability, some kind of pecking order ranking that gets developed here as far as teams that can consistently deliver tournament after tournament? And that's where I think Starseries leaves us. We had some excellent CS, and props to NiP once again. That's 2 titles this year that they've picked up now in big tournaments as well. The first one being Malmo, and now they managed to pick up Starseries. I mean, that looks great. But still leaves me wondering what to expect for the next tournament. And it really should build up the whole SK storyline, basically, where all eyes are going to be on them. Because at this point, if it does look as shaky as it does in the rest of the teams, if SK manage to maintain that level of theirs, I feel like they're going to just completely destroy everything in their way. So interesting times as far as tournaments are concerned. Obviously, we'll see coming up. But a couple points that I wanted to make before I close. The Asian teams look fantastic, or at least very interesting. Bodes well. It's super sick to see Tyloo still maintaining a level, being able to take on teams and really, show us what they're capable of. Narrow loss in the end, weren't quite able to pull it off, but still, it bodes well to see Tyloo hitting that level. And Cyberzen, same thing. Super interesting to see them. So watching those two teams is going to be really fun. I mean, MVP... just don't have a T side, I think, is the Koreans, right? Just don't have a T side. They had some very interesting CT setups. Mirage in particular was a lot of fun to watch, just because they were so aggressive on CT. This is why I love watching Mirage. I just adore that map for me now, because Inferno isn't an option anymore, obviously. And so Mirage, for me, was like second after Inferno. So now Mirage obviously sits at the top for me, where there's just so many fun aggressive options that are available on both sides, so that you never really know what you're going to get, right? It always feels so fun to watch on Mirage, especially teams that are competent on it. And MVP on their CT side, they were taking fights. They were ultra aggressive, pushing Palace, pushing Pit, going up to mid. I mean, they're just nonstop poking and prodding, not letting their opponents get comfortable. And Flipside eventually had to just really slow things down and play it super slow. And it's just, and so you're thinking, okay, this is shaping up to be a really sick first half. Going into the second half, MVP just don't have a T side. You're like, well, shit. All right, fine, thank you. All right, well, one half looks good. Now we just need we just need the other half. And I think more exposure to international tournaments like this one will only bode well for them, right? Will only lead into a better MVP in the end. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on them. Was a little bit let down, but excited, right? I think that there's some potential to keep an eye on. And last point, real quick, it is starting to drag on. Last point was Maikelele. Thought that he did a very good job, it seems to me. Natural chemistry that he just kind of fits into NiP, it seems. And you know, there's a video that I did last week, a week before, talking about Maikelele joining up again as the stand-in with NiP, and like perhaps what his mindset is coming into this, because I think, you know, you could think, oh, well, NiP, you know, they have a stand-in, they don't have any expectations, they're just going to come in and play their game. Yes, that's true to an extent, but I think for that stand-in, and a stand-in in Maikelele's case in particular, where you really want to showcase the best possible CS while still fitting into the team, it's a tough sort of scenario for him, right? Because he's been out in the boonies for a while now, out in the wilds, right? And so this is his opportunity to play against the best in the world again, and to really show that, hey, I can be that contender, and I am changing, I am evolving, you know, basically maturing. And I feel like he definitely showed us something this tournament where he had some flash plays. He also had some very consistent plays. He seemed to mesh well with the team. He showed that he could definitely play in that environment. And so for Maikelele, I think this was a fantastic tournament. I was really happy to see him do so well. And NiP as a whole, obviously, but Maikelele in particular, just because I think he's really interesting as a player, and I want to see more from him. So he didn't let us down. He could have had just this horrible tournament where, you know, it clearly just not fitting in well, not meshing well, and you know, just kind of obviously being a bit disappointing. I don't think that was the case. I think he did a very good job, well-rounded through and through. And so that you know, one of the high points, I think, for the tournament, for me at least, was to see Maikelele really deliver on the stand-in front, because he's been through quite a few rough times. And so really interesting to see. All in all, a fantastic weekend of CS, just a great time. And so, you know, definitely makes you feel good. You know, coming out of the holidays, we're going to get back into the grind where there's going to be leagues and events and everything else. And, you know, to start off with a bang like this, definitely a feel-good moment. So if you guys happen to miss the tournament, definitely recommend going back at least to watch the finals. Finals were fantastic. And otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.